NC State's third down defense has been catastrophic. Miami can exploit.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Third down conversions haven't been a consistent problem for Miami, but they went just 3-9 on third down against Syracuse, and that stat left a bad taste in my mouth. And I was hoping for a slump buster. I think we've got it this week. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you to the everydayers for that. On this episode, we're going to talk about some important recruiting visitors this Saturday, including a major flip candidate in the class of 2026. And if you haven't noticed, Miami's been flipping players left and right this week. Why stop now? We're going to talk key players versus NC State. A couple of important notes on Miami's college football playoff resume, which obviously means nothing if you don't win out. But if you do win out, there's already some bright spots on that resume. But how about these key stats, okay? We've been harping on this all week. Not only have I talked about it, Carson Beck talked about it, OC Shannon Dawson brought it up, Mario Cristobal discussed it. The need for Miami's offense to start faster. Why are they starting slow? Why aren't they getting big, explosive plays earlier in the game to spark the offense? Because that seems to be what it takes. It's hitting a big play. And I think, to me, converting third downs early in this football game. And again, like Miami overall this year has been pretty good on third down, ranked 32nd in college football, 32nd in FBS. That's respectable. Convert about 46% of their attempts, but they are coming off a pretty poor third down performance at 33%, 3 for 9 against Syracuse. And, I think part of the issue when you're not winning on third down, you're not winning on first and second down. But third down conversions, let's take a look at that first, because NC State, as we say in the soccer community, they are diabolical at defending third downs, like really, really bad. The Wolfpack defense, which it has soft spots in the defensive secondary, and this is something we're going to fully break this down with Kenton Gibbs and Grayson Boone coming up. The next episode after this one is going to be our crossover episode. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack and his colleague Grayson Boone are going to help me break this game down. But the Wolfpack defense ranks 121st in opponent third down conversion percentage, meaning 121st out of 133 teams. They allow opponents to convert about 45% of their third down chances. I mentioned Miami converts about 46% of their attempts. And the Hurricanes, by the way, defensively on third down are really good. They rank 12th nationally on third down defense. They give up conversions just 32% of the time. You're going up against a very prolific NC State offense, C.J. Bailey and company, but they're not great on third down conversions themselves. They're a little bit above average. They rank 58th nationally. They convert about 41% of their third downs. But, folks, this is where, to me, winning and losing this game, some of the big recipes here. Obvious ones we talk about. Win the turnover margin, right? In Miami's only 2 losses this year, they lost the turnover margin in both of those. Cut down the freaking penalties, right? Miami in their loss to Louisville was penalized 9 times. In the loss against SMU, they were penalized 12 times. Only 1 time this year has Miami committed fewer penalties than the opponent, and that was last week against Syracuse. Cut down the penalties, keep the turnovers down, but yeah, third down in both directions. Conversions and third downs allowed is going to tell a big, big story for this football game. And I've been talking a lot this week with our good friend Calvin Harris, former Miami Hurricanes offensive lineman, and he watches football games a different way than a lot of us do. Like most of us are watching the ball. We're watching kind of where things go and who's breaking tackles and stuff. When Calvin watches football, and I try to do this sometimes, but I don't do it on every single play, he's just watching the offensive line, and he's watching the offensive tackles. And Calvin has assured me that Rueben, Bane, and Akeem Mesidor are going to have chances against the offensive tackles of NC State, that they're not going to be able to contain these guys. And, keeping CJ Bailey, keeping him bottled up, keeping him contained, and making him uncomfortable. Because another key stat for this football game, it's the most obvious thing in the world, but bear with me because it gets a little deeper. You have to peel back a layer of the onion, right? Everybody knows that, 99.9% of quarterbacks are better without pressure than they are when facing pressure, right? That's obvious. But when you go through 17 starting ACC quarterbacks, the one who ranks number 2 in terms of the passer rating difference between clean pocket versus pressure, CJ Bailey, the difference between how poor his passer rating is when he's facing pressure versus how good the rating is when he's got a clean pocket is the second biggest difference in the entire ACC. Mason Heinschel, the quarterback of Pitt, is number 1 in terms of a lot better in a clean pocket versus not. Carson Beck is actually third. So keeping a clean pocket for Beck, Miami's offensive line, outside of the Syracuse game where they gave up 2 sacks, they've kept Beck's jersey clean for most of the season. But CJ Bailey, every quarterback is better when they don't face pressure, but CJ Bailey is a lot better when he doesn't face pressure. So getting in his grill is going to be an important key on this one. But again, coming off a performance where Miami's offense converted just 33% of their third downs, you're going up against one of the worst third down defenses in the country. You need to be sharp, right? And part of that is you're down in distance. Let's get some 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, not 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10s. So you have to win 1st and 2nd down. Let's hold on to the football, right? I mean, we've had some costly drops on 3rd downs in recent weeks, but again, we don't want to be going until, 2.5 minutes left in the second quarter before Miami scores their first points. You could get away with that against Syracuse. Don't think you're going to be able to get away with that against NC State. So those are some stats where Miami has to win. A couple of general defensive stats for NC State. Their D is, again, like they're not good. The way that my guy Kenton describes it to me, he co-hosts Locked On ACC with me. He hosts Locked On Wolfpack. NC State's defense is not good, but sometimes they're opportunistic, right? Sometimes they bend and don't break. Sometimes they'll force a key takeaway when the other team is in the red zone, but they're not good. Like, opportunistic and good are not the same thing for them. They're 110th nationally in scoring defense. They allow over 30 points per game. Miami's D, by comparison, the defense has been the strength of the football team. Hurricanes rank 10th nationally in scoring defense, giving up just 15 points per game. So you have every reason for your offense to win this week. And, we don't, at the time that I record this, we don't have the Thursday night injury report yet. I'm recording this before that comes out. But we think CJ Daniels is going to be back this week, which should be massive. I mean, he's, right behind Malachi Toney, who's been your best receiver all season long. CJ, when healthy, has been your second best this year. Getting him back will be big. We do not expect Mark Fletcher back in your rushing rotation this week. Thankfully, we've seen Gerard Pringle break out last week. He's been primarily a second half change of pace guy. I think Pringle might have earned himself some first half carries. He hasn't gotten a carry in the first half all season. This might be the week for him. And then, of course, Marty Brown and Jordan Lyle will be heavily involved in that running back rotation as well. But you have to exploit that NC State D. And, of course, Miami's D is going to need to do their thing. We'll break down some more of the key players when we come back. Plus, if you go like blind resume, and again, I know Miami has to win out to make the CFP. That is non-negotiable. But if they do win out, I believe they should be one of the top 12 teams in the country. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Miami Hurricanes are favored by 15.5 points this week on FanDuel. If you think that number's too big, do with it what you will. If you think the Hurricanes are going to steamroll NC State, take Miami minus 15.5. And yeah, the NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is offering new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up today, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen on this Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 podcast network in the world. That's thanks to you guys. That's thanks to the everydayers for being with us here through the good times and the bad times and the hopeful times and the disparaging times. Locked On Canes everydayers are awesome, and thank you guys for being here. By the way, here's another really important stat when you talk about hitting explosive plays. Miami hit some last week, but the explosive passing plays hit were primarily done with yak. And that's not to say Carson Beck didn't play well. I thought he played well last week against Syracuse. He did. Like the pass that he threw to Keelan Marion, who broke it out and went off to the races, was really well thrown, really well placed. So I'm not taking anything away from Beck, but it is worth noting. Matt Shodell from Cane Sport noted this stat, according to Pro Football Focus. Carson Beck last week did not attempt a pass of over 19 yards through the air in the Syracuse game. So again, most of the explosive plays came from yards after catch. So nothing was thrown with a depth more than 19 yards down the field. And it's not to say Beck can't do it, right? We saw it plenty of times in the Florida State game. So you have to wonder, again, against an NC State secondary that's been vulnerable. Not that Syracuse's secondary was very good, but if we're going to let it rip downfield a little bit more, and I would imagine if CJ Daniels is back, we're going to let it rip a little bit more downfield. And I'd like to see, Josh Moore. You talk about key players. Josh Moore has been coming on a little bit more, no pun intended, as of late. True freshman receiver, but when I was able to watch him in fall practices, fall training camp, really consistent, deep target, downfield target in practice. We've seen it a couple times in games. Maybe we see more of it this week. We saw the speed of Keelan Marion unleashed last week. And then, Malachi Toney is the type of guy you can get him the football in a number of different ways. You can run him. You can run him out of the wildcat. You can hand it off to him. You can run jet sweeps, reverses. He can throw the football. And obviously you're going to target Malachi downfield as well. Now, Malachi Toney, of course, is, every defensive coordinator is going to spend time watching his tape and figuring out your Toney strategy, right? You always say the most dangerous players are the ones that you really have to game plan against. Rueben, Bane, and Akeem Mesidor accomplished that on defense. A lot of every opposing offensive coordinator is going to have to spend some extra time dealing with the Rueben Bane strategy, right? Opposing D coordinators, and Dave Doran, the head coach at NC State, is a defensive-minded guy. You're going to have to spend that time kind of scheming up your plan against Malachi Toney. But the thing is, there's no all-encompassing plan. When you have someone who's overall that dangerous and overall that versatile, it's just up to Shannon Dawson to find ways to get Malachi the football. And we've been seeing more creativity in that regard over the past couple of weeks. Someone who could be a key player this week, especially with some of the rumblings on the message boards about, possible defensive back injury. We'll see what happens when the injury report comes out. But somebody who's back from injury and could play a key role in this game is Jadis Richard, number 25. God, I was so happy for him last week. I didn't know he was going to play against Syracuse. Richard a year ago, early November against Duke last year, suffered an ACL injury, has been out since then. And then Richard, surprisingly to me, made a shock return last week. And he played like he was shot out of a freaking cannon. Jadis Richard was all over the field, making tackles. He was in on sacks. He got a little overzealous and kind of tapped the helmet of the quarterback, Ricky Collins, and got called for a roughing the passer. But it's he was playing with just unbridled passion and violence. And, Jadis might play a bigger role in this game. He made his return in the second half last week. I would say every linebacker and every safety, anyone who may be involved in covering Justin Jolie, the star tight end of NC State. That may be by committee. It may not be one person who keys in on him all game, but you've got a hell of a job there because Justin Jolie, the NC State tight end, let me pull up his stats for you this season. I think he has missed some time. But all right, so receive. Yeah, Jolie, he scored 5 touchdowns this year. He leads the team in receiving touchdowns. So he's a guy you have to watch out for in the red zone. And he is NC State's second leading receiver with 365 receiving yards. And he's got a long of 59. So he can get downfield and stretch the field as well. One of the better tight ends in the country. Miami's going to have to be mindful of him. We expect Hollywood Smothers, the star running back from NC State. We think he's going to be back. I think he's definitely going to be back this week. He did miss. I think he missed the Georgia Tech game. That was before the bye week with injury. Smothers, to me, Miami does a really good job on rushing defense in general, but Miami's defensive ends, Bane especially and Mesidor, are really good against the run. Hollywood Smothers likes to run to the outside, but he's been really effective this year. He's got 6 rushing touchdowns. He's got 120 carries for 825 yards. So his 825 yards, you compare it to Miami's leading rusher is Mark Fletcher, who we don't expect to play this week. Fletcher has 636 yards to Smothers' 825. So he's a major, major weapon for them. And quarterback matchup, it's NC State has themselves a good one. We know him well. He's from the crib, right? Former Chaminade Madonna standout C.J. Bailey, who is in his second year at NC State. He's having a good season, 19 touchdown passes to 7 interceptions. He's thrown for over 2,400 yards this year. He's completing 70% of his passes. He's been more prolific this year than Carson Beck. Beck has about 300 fewer passing yards, 4 fewer passing touchdowns, and 2 extra interceptions. And Bailey also runs a little bit. His rushing stats on the season for C.J. Bailey, South Florida native, he has 137 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns this year. So he can be dangerous there as well. So Miami's going to really try. He's not Tommy Castellanos. Like, he's not running around like a headless chicken or anything like that, or Byron Brown at South Florida. Miami actually contained Byron Brown. They didn't let him run at all, really. But C.J. Bailey has that in his back pocket as well. So anyone, I'm trying to think of other key players for Miami that I would like to get more involved. I mean, the tight ends, and actually Cristobal brought it up. He would like to get Alex Bauman and our guy Elijah Lofton, more involved in the passing game. It's been pretty hit or miss with those guys. Haven't had a whole lot of tight end involvement in the passing game. I think Gerard Pringle is a key player in this one. Maybe you use Marty a little bit more early in the game to kind of wear down the defense, and then Pringle can break off some runs in the second half. We'll see. I mean, Miami, I think they showed us against Syracuse, they're getting a little bit more eager to kind of mix it up with the offense and run a few more tricky type of plays, run a few more, downfield things and sort of explosive plays. But we know the bread and butter of this football team is still pounding the rock, imposing your offensive line, breaking tackles and all that, and wearing down the defense. So I don't think Miami's going to completely go away from that identity this week. But, you expect the defense is going to play well, but the offense is going to have to do their part. You've got to be able to win on both sides and play complementary football. And, again, I think the number's really big. 15.5-point favorites against a pretty good NC State team. Miami's getting a lot of respect, right? You're getting a lot of respect from apparently the bettors and the sports books. Although, there's been some weird stuff this year where Miami's double-digit favorites, and then like 2 hours before kickoff, the line shrinks by 2 or 3 points. We'll see if that happens again this week. And speaking of Miami's offensive line, I feel as though I guess you could say they're being disrespected to not be what are we on, the semifinalists now for the Joe Moore Award, which goes out to the best offensive line. There are 10 teams that are still in the running for the Joe Moore, and Miami is not one of them. And that comes despite the fact that Miami's run blocking grade is 10th nationally. Their pass blocking grade is 3rd nationally, and yet they're not considered by the Joe Moore committee to be a top 10 offensive line. The ones who are considered top 10 are Cincinnati, who's 76th in pass blocking, 9th in run blocking, Duke, who's 15th in run blocking, 22nd in pass blocking, Georgia Tech is 55th in both run and pass blocking, Indiana, 3rd in run blocking, 12th in pass blocking. They deserve to be there. Iowa deserves to be on the list for sure. They're top in run blocking, 2nd in pass blocking. Michigan, 15th in run blocking, 34th in pass protection. Oregon, 17th in run blocking, 1st in pass protection. Texas A&M, 52nd run blocking, 10th in pass blocking. Utah, 45th in run blocking, 8th in pass blocking. Vanderbilt, 70th in run blocking, and 127th in pass blocking. They're top 10 and Miami's not, when Miami is top 10 statistically in run and pass blocking. But I'll tell you the reason why. I believe the reason why Miami is not a Joe Moore Award semifinalist. I think it's the penalties. Yeah, I think, and yeah, I don't think anyone from Joe Moore specifically stated this. This is just my assumption. Because again, like statistically, in some really important metrics, Miami has a top 10 offensive line. But I think all of the false starts probably work against you in that. So that's your O-line resume. But let's talk about this playoff resume real quick. And again, Miami, even if Miami wins out ranked at number 15, you're going to need some help to get into the college football playoff, even if you finish 10-2, which is not a guarantee. It's a hypothetical. But if you look at Miami's resume, it's a little surprising to me that you're ranked behind teams like Vanderbilt and Utah, okay? You know, all of these teams, Louisville, Miami, Texas, USC, Utah, Vandy, and Notre Dame, all have 2 losses. These are all the 2-loss teams that are in the field in the CFP Top 25. Miami's best win came against a top 5 FPI, ESPN FBI team in Notre Dame. Nobody else has a win that good. If you're looking at the chart here, Louisville's best win was against 13, which I think was Miami. Texas against 14, USC against 18, Utah against 34, Vandy against 20, Notre Dame against 10. Miami has 2 wins against committee top 25 teams. So does Louisville and Texas, but USC just has 1. Utah just has 1. Vandy has 0, and Notre Dame has number 1. And by the way, if you're trying to figure out why Vanderbilt is number 14 and ranked higher than Miami, the answer is 3 letters: SEC. That's why they're ranked as high as they are. And same thing with Texas. I mean, Texas at number 10, SEC are the 3 reasons why Texas is ranked that high, all right? Miami has 0 losses of 9 or more points. Their losses were by 3 points and by 6 points in overtime. USC has a double-digit loss. So does Utah. So does Vandy. Notre Dame does not. And Miami's strength of record is 17th. Louisville's is 26th. Texas is 10th. USC's is 15th. Utah is 19th. Vandy is 11th. And Notre Dame is 13th. So, I mean, if you look at it, and anyone can say, hey, Donno's cherry-picking stats that look pretty good for Miami. I guess. I mean, it was actually, I think it was David Hale. David Hale from ESPN is the one who put out this chart. See, this is David Hale's tweet where he says, who's who. So I credit him for these numbers, and you could say, hey, they're cherry-picked to make the ACC or Miami look better. But again, like I feel Miami's resume to this point is not as bad as some people make it out to be. And if the Hurricanes do manage to win out, I believe they have the opportunity, or should have the opportunity, to play their way into the college football playoff. By the way, what's going on with the committee? Did you see the committee chairman? And we were just quoting him the other day. Mac Rhodes, who's the athletic director he's the AD of Baylor. So he was the CFP committee chair. He stepped down from his chairman duties, stepped down from his CFP committee duties and also stepped down as the AD of Baylor because he's got multiple scandals going on. Like there's an ongoing investigation about him confronting football players, and then there's a new investigation that Baylor will not release the details of, but it has to do with their like conduct code. Remember that's a religious institution, so like apparently he is, he's being investigated for violating their conduct code in an unspecified way, and he steps down, and so his duty as chair, he's replaced by the Arkansas AD. And then the AD of Utah, who happens to be one of those teams that's on the bubble, the athletic director of Utah has been appointed to fill a chair in the committee room, which can't we find some people who aren't involved in specific universities, especially ones who are on the bubble? Can't we find some people who aren't directly involved with these schools to fill these roles? You're telling me like Utah, who's ranked number 13 right now, their athletic director is now going to be sitting in on the committee meetings, presumably lobbying for Utah. Presumably. Like, we can't get Miami AD Dan Radakovich a seat at that committee. Can't get me a seat at the committee. I would do right by Miami if I was in there. So the committee's a mess right now. But again, all Miami can control. Carson Beck said it yesterday. All we can do is win. It's all Miami can worry about right now. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Shoulda won the SMU game. We can't go back in time and fix it. All we can do is win. And you want to win in front of these recruits who are going to be at the game. An important flip candidate. Miami can try to flip one from Coach Prime in Colorado. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Do you need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Their Trademaster perks, like priority shipping and dedicated support, make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Maybe we'll get some more good news this week or this weekend on recruits. I've been really busy for the past several days, right? On Sunday, Miami flipped former Kansas commit, 4-star safety J.J. Dunnigan. Welcome to the U. On Monday, Miami flipped former LSU defensive end commit D'Anthony Lafayette. Welcome to the U. On Tuesday, Miami flips former Penn State committed defensive lineman Isaac Chikura. Welcome to the U. And then yesterday, what are we on now? Wednesday? Wednesday, Miami flips former Pitt committed defensive lineman Logan Nagel. We got a flip candidate who's going to be visiting Miami this weekend. And this weekend, it's senior day, and we're going to talk more about the seniors before the game on Saturday because I have so much respect. You start with a guy like Inez Cooper, who I feel like I was just covering this dude as a freshman. Like, time really flies. And I hope Inez gets drafted high because he's having himself a great college career. But we'll talk more about the seniors this week. You want to win for them, but you want to win for all of these recruits that are coming in. You got a bunch of guys who are already committed, like at least half of your class, or close to half of your class of 2026. 4-star receiver Samorian Wingo is going to be at the game. 4-star corner Jalen Waters. 4-star defensive lineman Keyshawn Stansel. 4-star safety James Dunnigan, who you just flipped this week. 4-star receiver Milan Paris, who you flipped a couple weeks ago. 4-star edge Ashari Charles. 4-star edge Jordan Campbell. 4-star offensive lineman Joel Irvin. 4-star edge D'Anthony Lafayette, you just flipped. 3-star linebacker J.J. Edwards. 3-star interior offensive lineman, friend of the show, Cannon Pickett. 3-star defensive lineman, Tyson Bacon. 3-star defensive lineman, Freddie Saintius will all be visiting. Plus, and there's a bunch of 2027 and 2028s and beyond, but focusing here on 2026, which is the class that's going to be signed in about 3 weeks, right? December 3rd. Miami is getting a visit this weekend from Colorado committed 4-star tight end, Gavin Mueller. I like where this is trended from everything, or where this is trending. I like it from everything that I'm seeing and hearing. Gavin Mueller, you love his size, 6'6", 250-pound tight end. He's been committed to Coach Prime since May 14th of 2025. So, he's kept his options open enough among other teams, including Miami, that's trying to flip him. LSU has been in the mix, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Wisconsin. But the Hurricanes are trying to get this done. And with Gavin Mueller visiting this weekend, I'm feeling pretty good about this one. And he could join. Miami's trying to do a 2 tight end class again this year. He could join Izzy Briggs, 4-star tight end who's already committed over the summer. So keep your eyes on Gavin Mueller when you're talking about possible flip candidates. You can add him to that list. Other guys that we're watching, even though they're not visiting this weekend, we're keeping an eye on former Clemson committed safety Blake Stewart, decommitted from Clemson a couple weeks ago. Miami has been trending there. And we're also looking at Wisconsin committed running back Amari Latimer. There seems to be some Miami smoke there. So some of the players that we're watching, and then you got Gavin Mueller visiting this weekend, which is really, really big. And Miami's got a top 10 recruiting class right now and climbing. All right, folks, the next time you hear us and see us, we're going to be doing a crossover episode with Locked On Wolfpack. You've probably heard me on with Kenton Gibbs many times. He co-hosts Locked On ACC with me, but his co-host on Locked On Wolfpack, Grayson Boone, does an incredible job. I'm gonna have to hold my own because it's gonna be 1 against 2. Like I'm gonna get double teamed. Well, that doesn't sound good. I'm gonna be double covered. Sounds a little bit better by Kenton and Grayson. I got to remember to edit that part out. But I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try to hold Miami's own against the Wolfpack double coverage on a crossover episode of Locked On Canes. We'll have that for you later on another episode right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, #1 podcast network in America. Your team every day.